Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Pride Perspectives, a conversation with the community. I'm JP Burlington, class of 1995 and Director of Admission, and I am proud to be on this Zoom and webinar with this panel, and they'll be introducing themselves in just a second, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about our Pride Perspectives series. We have been putting on this webinar series since April, and there are a number of different conversations that have gone on since then, from April throughout the summer to the fall, and now here in the bleak days of February. But from young alumni like the gentleman you see in front of you to older alums from the 70s and 80s, to current parents, to faculty, to students. So all of these videos can be found on our YouTube channel. They're also on our website. And even in the next month or so, we have a couple of other Pride Perspectives lined up, a great webinar on career insights from alumni from the past 20 years. And then Mr. Taylor will be kind of finishing up the winter term on March 3rd with a wrap up of how we did this winter term through all of what we're going through as a school, as a community, and of course, as a country. So it's a privilege to be here with you again. And as we have discussed every time we get on one of these, we're going to do a little presentation for you and talk about theater arts at Trinity-Pawling. And with that said, as you know, in a webinar, there's the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And if you'd like to ask a question, please don't hesitate to type that in. I'll either respond to it immediately just with my response in the Q&A, or I'll save that towards the end and we'll either ask our panelists or it'll just be part of the discussion. I might just throw it in there throughout the night. So the other thing that we always promise is that unless something drastic happens, this will be over at 8 p.m. We know that every one of you who is on this screen, along with the panelists, have probably been on a computer for at least 10 hours today. So we don't want to take too much of your time, but we do want to talk about theater at Trinity-Pawling from these guys' time, Mr. Burnham's time, and also even back in the 90s when I was a part of the program as well. So it should be fun. And as we begin, we're going to start with introductions. So I am going to do this as we normally do around my screen. And Mr. Bolding was the first to hop on tonight. So go for it. Introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself and Trinity-Pawling.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Burlington. Hello all, I'm Richard Bolden, and I am currently a freshman at the University of New Haven. I did 2 years at TP, and I was heavily involved with the theater program and with football and basketball. Currently, now going back to University of New Haven, I'm majoring in TV production, and I'm heavily involved there too. I'm currently about to I'm currently about to get involved with USGA, which is like the student government of the university. I'm involved with NAACP and Charger Bulletin, which is the school news school news service. So I'm happy to be here tonight with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Good to see you again. Mr. Tanner.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nate Tanner. I'm class of 2018. I went to TP for 6 years, so I was there for a while. I came up through middle school. There I was involved in theater, obviously, as well as cross country, squash, and baseball. Just had a wonderful experience. And now I'm at the College of the Holy Cross. I'm a junior. I'm a theater major with an environmental studies minor. And I've been in 5 productions now at college, and I am directing my first full-length production this spring. So really excited and looking forward to that. Happy to be here.
That's awesome. And I know that makes Mr. Burnham smile just a little bit. Proud, proud. Mr. Hess.
Hey everyone, my name is Solomon Hess. I started Trinity-Pawling my freshman year, graduated there last year with Richie. I did a whole bunch of shows. I also played 2 varsity sports at the same time, and then went on to Vassar College, where I am a freshman right now, and double majoring in drama and film with a possible music minor, and also playing lacrosse still.
Okay, so not busy at all. None of you are busy. That's good. It's good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
nothing to do at your campuses. So, Mr. Burnham, I'll hand the baton off to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Burlington, for hosting us, and I'll come back to you, I'm sure, a few times for some things. It's really great to have all 3 of you guys here, and we're hoping that Joey can hop on here soon as well. Yeah, I'm Mr. Burnham. I am the chair of the arts as well as the director of theater arts here at Trinity-Pawling. I'm in my 4th year. Really lucky to have these 3 guys on my stage and get to work with them. Nate was a senior when I came in the first year, and I was able to direct him in Midsummer as well as in Peter and the Starcatcher, and then have a couple great years with Solomon, and then also Richie as well. So yeah, I'm thrilled to host and be part of this, and help Mr. Burlington move this along, and share some of the stuff that we're doing in the theater and everything. And it's and as Ms. Burlington said, yeah, I'm really pleased to hear that you guys are all still doing it. And I know that it's, for Solomon and Rich, it's only a year out of school, but you're both, it sounds like Solomon, you have like 7 majors and a couple minors going on there. And then, and you got Nate over there too. So it's great. Nate, tell us a little bit about the play that you're directing at school.
Sure. You got to be careful with that question because I can talk about it for hours.
Keep it brief.
I'll try. It's called The Theory of Relativity. It's a musical, but it's also a song cycle. And so it's going to be done entirely virtually. So we are going to film all of the different scenes and songs in front of green screens. And it's going to kind of be mashed together into this song cycle musical that has a really beautiful message, using Einstein's theory of relativity as sort of a way to bring out the purpose in all of us, and sort of talk about the question of why we're here and how we affect one another without even necessarily knowing it. So I have a cast of 11 people. We're doing sort of a hybrid format of in-person, one-on-one meetings, socially distanced, and a lot of Zoom calls and that sort of stuff. But it's a very welcome challenge that I'm taking on.
That's great. That's great. I know that you mentioned to me, I think in a text or an email, that it's kind of like a musical version of Almost Maine. So that's kind of nice to hear, because we have a nice connection to that, where both Solomon and Nate were in that. And then we just had John Cariani on as a guest artist last week for our playwriting class, which was really great, and all that. So Solomon, you're at Vassar and you start classes next week and all of that. And you're taking a theater class with Chris Grabowski, who is a professor there, who I know pretty well. Tell us a little bit about what's coming up for you for this semester.
Well, this is totally unplanned because I didn't know Nate was doing this, but I was asked to direct the Theory of Everything today by someone in the music department. So we're not as far along as Nate's group is, but we're planning on doing it in person once the snow melts and we can use one of the bigger lawns. And we're gonna we'll hold auditions and cast it and try to put on an in-person show. Last semester there was one in-person show on campus. A group of 3 upperclassmen did The Aliens, and I was able to go and see, and they did a very good job. I also had one theater class last semester that was all tech driven, and my theater class this semester will be all acting driven. So I get to see, all perspectives of what I want to do.
That's great. That's great. And now we're going to turn to Rich Boulding, and I have a feeling that he's directing the Theory of Relativity, but they're doing it next week. So get ready. Get ready. Here we go. Right, Rich? Yes, and improv, man. Here we go.
No, not at all. I wish they're very involved, and that's my next goal, to try and get as involved as I can in with theater.
Well, and you're doing it right now, right? You're doing it right now with your TV production and everything that you're involved in. So it's, you know, there's steps towards that, and it's also wide ranging that you get to do. Um, Tell us a little bit about, you know, your time here in the theater department or in productions at Trinity-Pawling, how it's kind of shaped you or how it maybe inspired you to do what you're doing. For me personally, I didn't take an acting class until I got to college, right? So then it kind of just bloomed there for me. I had a love of movies and I loved the movies. And then I started to get the theater bug, but you guys had it at a younger age and it kind of caught you. Solomon, share a little bit about that. Nate, hop right into, and then Rich, I want to talk a little bit more about your experience when I was able to rope you in and we had a couple really fantastic moments. So cool, go for it, Solomon.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of got roped in to start my freshman year. The director at the time saw that I was in the winter concert, and he was like, "Why don't you come audition for the play? You know, pretty good stage presence." And I was like, "Oh, I, didn't really want to, and I didn't think I would have time with playing a winter sport as well." And he was like, "No, rehearsals are after dinner. You have plenty of time." And that was definitely the big thing that made theater a possible contributor to my life, was that everything was spaced out so I could do both sports and theater at the same time.
Right.
So I
So
did that one show that in the winter, and then I was hooked from there on.
That's great. So yeah, so right, and that's one of the things I think that sets us apart, and it also is really interesting is that you're able to do, like you said, right? Like so after school, you're able to do sports, you're able to practice, and we have farming. There's other things, other options as well, right? So in segueing into that, Nate, right? So here you are. I've heard these great stories, and I remember seeing you my first year a little bit up on the catwalk doing some homework in the evening in the theater, right? So you guys would go up there and do some work. And so talk to me a little bit about that, right? You were here 6 years, you get the bug here and you get involved. And how did you balance that? I mean, we've got 3 prefects here over the course of 3 years, which is really pretty amazing. So they're doing it all academically, athletically, and artistically. So Nate, what about you? How did you balance that?
That's a great question. It was tough. You sort of everything was in its own regard a separate thing. So I had school, I had sports, and I had theater, and it was sort of a nice trifecta of like different learning mediums and different activities, which kept me constantly engaged and challenged in different ways. In a lot of ways, theater was sort of my time to be with people I really enjoyed being around. I think that's one of the great things about theater people is they all are really caring and considerate, and just enjoy being with one another. But it's also, there's something about being on stage where you don't have any of the problems that you do in real life, and you just get to be somebody else and enjoy that. So the theater, to a point, really became my safe space. Like you said, I would be doing work in there just because I knew that was somewhere I could go and just be myself, and not necessarily worry about all the other stresses, and just get down to work, and enjoy being there.
It's great. I mean, and you say that like creating a safe space. And what I like I like to say is I'm trying to make something. I've kind of stepped away from saying that it's a safe space as much as it's a comfortable space, right? Because you want it to be dangerous. Sometimes you want it to be where you're a little uncomfortable and you're doing some things that maybe, where you're like you said, you're stepping outside yourself to get a little bit closer to who you are. And I think that's really, for me as a theater educator, is the goal is to let you find your true voice, let you try to find your true self. And sometimes you do that by putting on the shoes of somebody else and kind of marrying those two worlds. I think about the first year that Rich was here and he came in to audition for Harvey, and Solomon was in Harvey. He played Elwood and he was just fantastic. And so Rich comes in and he crushes this little scene that he's in. And then he comes in and I cast him as the cab driver at the end of the play. And it's one of those moments that, you take a small little role and they say like, there's no small roles, they're just small actors. And Rich B is not a small guy. And he comes in and he brings down the house 3 nights in a row. And I'll never forget it. I just got goosebumps, Rich, just talking where you and I worked together on that for a lot. We worked on the script analysis, and you had like a couple light bulb moments where you're like, oh, I get it, Mr. B, I get it. And it was when you came in and you said, I'll never forget it when she said, I want my money now. And the place just erupted, right? It would just erupted, 300 students going nuts. Did that hook you? Was that the moment where you're like, wow, something's going on here?
So yes, definitely. Well, what I'll say is I remember the nights where I would stay over and like me and you would be going over lines like over and over and over, 10, 11 o'clock at night, just going over lines. And the thing is that you would think that, the amount of time that we spent going over my lines, that I had like like the whole entire play was about me. Like we were just going over lines. But the thing is that the one thing, I mean, I learned so much from the program, from you, from the school, everything. One of the things that really stood out that's helped me with acting a lot is you told me stop reading it like it's a script. Read it just like how like just read it like a regular flowing conversation. And it was that made a switch in my head. That was kind of more like, okay, you know what, you're right. Why am I reading it like I don't know the information? It's just like a regular conversation, how you would respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped me so much. And so when I did get to that part where it was like, I want my cash now, my dad is an MTA bus driver. So like a little of him got into me and I'm like, yeah, I want my money now. Like, so definitely it was that part.
That was, yeah. I mean, I remember that vividly. And I mean, poor Solomon here is schlepping for 2 hours on that stage, driving the whole bus and doing everything, right? And then Rich comes on for a 7-minute scene and just crushes it. And it was great. It was really, really great. But well, in what you're talking about, what the stuff that we went over, we were talking about rhetoric and we're talking about text and right. And so if you're listening to the lines, if you're really in it, the line before usually with good writing will inform you of what your next line is. And if you're just listening and intently listening, it's much, much easier. It's a hard thing to remember. It's a hard thing to know and to learn and to trust. I don't want to leave out Mr. Burlington here, class of 95 as well, right? So Mr. Burlington graced the stage before I got to meet him, and I heard great stories about him and his time here and all of these things. And then I was able to rope him into joining us for Spelling Bee, which Rich was in, as well as Solomon. So Miss Burlington came back and had a fantastic scene with Mrs. Tucci, as well as Gianna. I still have the video of the first time that you rehearsed that on stage with music stands and everything, and Gianna starting to tear up because she couldn't believe that, that this was going to happen and it wasn't going to be played by two 16-year-olds and singing off key or whatever it was. It was like, oh my gosh. So tell us a little bit about your time here, Mr. Burlington, in the theater, and how you've, now we have this beautiful space over here and it's different, and that's a flagship of ours. And then you get to come back and be part of something.
Yeah, it was, one of those interesting journeys because I was always a singer. That was my, the beauty of Trinity-Pawling, as these guys have said, is that you can be an athlete, but you can also still do the things that you love doing that aren't athletic. And so I played my sports, but I was able to sing in the choir and then any, musical that I could get my hands on, I did as a student. And it was interesting when you were talking about, how do you balance it? And I don't understand how they balance it, because it is such an incredible, everything that you do in a boarding school takes time. And when most boarding schools, theater is in the afternoon. That is your sport. And so I remember my junior year, my advisor actually told me that I was burning the candle at both ends. And because I was in every club I could get my hands in, I was trying to do homework, I was in sports. And so it was a lot, but that's the beauty of the people like an advisor, like a Mr. Burnham, who can kind of bring you back in. But just performing for me, whether it was on an athletic field or on stage or, with a score in my hand, singing was always something I enjoyed doing. And, having the opportunity to do it at a place like Trinity-Pawling, where, most people probably don't think about an all boys school and a great music program or a great theater program. And I think that myth is broken when you look at guys like this that we're talking to tonight, who all played varsity sports at a high level, but also crushed it on stage and will continue to. I mean, I can see Richard Bolding on ESPN in 10 years without question. And, you know, that maybe not ESPN, maybe it's New Haven, you know, sports radio or whatever it might be. But, you know, there's just something about, you know, being a student here and letting the faculty guide you in as many ways as possible. And that's what Mr. Burnham does. It's what many of us do in helping these young men kind of find. Mr. Taylor always talks about, the headmaster always talks about finding gifts and talents. And these guys found their gifts and talents at Trinity-Pawling. And they're now using them today. And they will then allow that to show forth, like the people that Nate and Solomon are directing soon. I mean, that's an incredible gift that they're going to be able to give to others. And, you know, for me, it was just an opportunity to do what I love, most importantly, in a safe place, to be able to make mistakes and not anybody care. Let's not forget to hang out with girls every night. I'll just say it right out. I mean, that was something that was a part of the package of being a theater student at Trinity-Pawling. Two of my best friends to this day are girls from Pawling High School who were part of the theater production. And I see the relationships that Nate and Solomon and Richard have with, and I know Mr. Burnham, you're going to talk a little bit about that, but that was a unique experience. Mm-hmm. To get up on stage with them and with their talent and their expertise in music and theater. So I'm rambling on because it's I think one of those moments where when I think back to being on our stage, it was the old gym and there were no seats. There was no lighting. I don't even know how we put these shows together. And there's actually an alum on right now from 1967. And he said that his first play was 12 Angry Men at Trinity-Pawling. And I actually, that show just must keep coming back because it was done in the 90s. I'm sure you guys probably did it in the last 5 or 6 years. But, oh, and by the way, this alum, if anyone has any interest in Hollywood, he's the guy to talk to. So we'll get you hooked up to a member of the class of 67. But anyway, I'm done talking, but it's just, I mean, it's a passion, music, theater. It's amazing how much it brings out in you. And Trinity-Pawling helped me do that. And then I went on and did it in college as well. So.
And your sister's a theater professor at Wheaton, and she's been down here to do a workshop with us on Theater of the Oppressed and Augusta Boal workshop, which was great, which was with Westover. So we've got that connection that's still going. I think what you mentioned though too, and it's going back to what Nate said earlier a little bit about, you know, I kind of want to segue a little bit. Like, do you feel like that by stepping into somebody else's shoes, like, and doing this idea that it's this idea that you become a little more self-aware, or that you start to figure out how you function and how other people function as well? I'm always pushing that to students as well as to any theater makers. And we're always doing that. We're always talking about empathy, but I mean, I truly feel like it's a visceral thing that happens. And if you want to share on that, Nate, or anybody else, about what your awareness of who you are, and maybe by taking on somebody else or getting to do something different than what you are.
Well, I'll just quick, Nate, before you, like, just my role, my quick one scene as a dad in Spelling Bee. It just, yes, I'm a father, but this was a very different role, you know, and it was an absent father. And, you know, so it was one of those situations where, you know, Gianna was emotional. I mean, it took me just to be able to get through the song because of all of the emotions that were coming in and thinking about what my life would be if that were me. So
Great. Perfect. Nate?
Yeah, I think so much of being an actor and playing a role is, objectives, beats, and tactics, which you hear a million times in the theater world, but it's figuring out why you're doing things and what has led to the events that are happening, during the show. And I think when you're playing a role, and hopefully if you're in the audience, you get to watch these things and these people and these events that you wouldn't necessarily get to see in your regular life. And because of that, you're exposed to so many different things, like different cultures or different experiences, that really can make you so much more empathetic when you put yourself in somebody else's shoes and just sit and watch and observe. You can learn so much from that. And I think that that's a really, really beautiful thing.
And I think it lends itself to like the collaboration. When I think of, I only got to direct you for a year there, but you and Solomon and Ben, as the Lost Boys and like Peter and the Starcatcher, which is just this collaborative group. And, when I think back on directing that, like at times, like, you guys would come in all the time. I'd be like, okay, I just want you to like be sheltered by these guys. And they've got like a bunch of bamboo at you. And you would come up with ways of doing things, right? And so again, it's this idea of learning by doing, and I think that's acting as well. And I think that it kind of just is ingrained there. Is there, Solomon, for you? I mean, is there something that that you find yourself having a moment where you're like, I don't know, just either your time here, or that from just where you are now, that is your awareness of who you are, or you're watching people differently, you're absorbing things differently?
I mean, I didn't like really consider theater in college until junior year, and I think that year was like the big, like, it was like, now I'm acting. Like before I was just like doing plays and like having fun, and now it's like I can actually like play this character, and like playing a character isn't just doing the accent of the character, of where the character's from, right? And it's not just saying the slang words like the character that the character says. Like it's practicing how you're walking like that character would walk, and that's not written in the script, right? You're interpreting that, right? And you're finding that, and then when you go out into the real world, you're like, that person walks completely different from me, and you meet these people, right? And then you're much more aware of what makes each person an individual, and what makes yourself an individual. If someone would play you, how would they play you? And if you would play this cashier that you just met, like how would you play them, right? All little things like that. It's not like that's like what you're constantly thinking about, but sometimes you have those moments of reflection. And I think like definitely Spelling Bee was probably, I know we keep coming back to Spelling Bee, but like that's probably my favorite show that I've done at school. Like that was probably the show that kind of tied it all together. And I was like, this is how Spelling Bee or Harvey, because Harvey was like, I had to play that there was an imaginary rabbit with me the entire show. And like that's more than just having an accent and saying there's an imaginary rabbit with me right now. Like you have to do that, you have to behave like that is your reality. So I think it was that fall and winter that my eyes were just opened.
That's, I mean, I'll say, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I mean, I think there was a huge shift in you. I mean, I got to know you, of course, your sophomore year, and I think there was a natural talent there. I saw that in Midsummer very, very clearly, and also in Peter and the Starcatcher and everything like that. But then with Harvey, I'm like, you're talking about, perfect example of that, right? Some of those scenes that you had, it's not scripted. There's nothing on the page, and that you brought Harvey into those scenes while you're being questioned by everybody, and in turning to him. Some of the biggest laughs and some of the most poignant moments in that play were those moments when that happened. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. And I felt like that's when there was a shift in you happening. And it was like, and then of course, you know, Spelling Bee was just magical. And again, it's this play that, you know, it's overlooked because, I mean, it's about 6 people that are underrated and that aren't the ones that get the attention usually. And now they get the attention. And I think that's the beauty of that play. I mean, Rich was in it and crushed as one of the 2 dads, right? And again, one of those moments, right? But going to what I'm talking about too, Rich, during Harvey, I remember you sitting in the house all the time watching and just watching, because you had that scene at the end, but you would come to rehearsal and you would watch Solomon and you would watch things. And so just absorbing, watching other people as well. And I think there's something to be said for that. That's how you can learn. You can learn by doing, you can learn by watching and observing and getting better at something. So what about for you? I mean, I think you're such a self-aware man. And this summer when we shared some time on when we had the Black Lives Matter symposium, and you and a handful of students and Trayvon and Marquise and everybody just openly, it was one of the highlights of the year for us, that that everything that you shared, and not having any understanding of what your journey you're on, but and have had to go through. So, but being self-aware and everything like that, share a little bit about that, what you've been able to take away from your time here, or just anything that you noticed in yourself.
So I'll start off with what you just said, with coming to rehearsal early and sitting there and just watching everybody, absorbing, you know, all the great talent that was up on the stage. It was amazing. I wouldn't trade that. I wouldn't trade that for the world. It was great to be able to see all of the talent that was really on that stage. Like, since Solomon is here, Solomon, like from even, it was a part during the I want to say it was the Harvey play, where, you know, you had to hang up a painting, but then, you know, like, you ended up putting it in the fireplace. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, not too many people, some people would have been like, kind of like stumbled and, you know, like, you know, what do I do? Like, you know, it kind of went frantic. You like, oh, it doesn't go, no, it goes in the fireplace. Yeah, come on, you know that. Like, you know what I'm saying? And you made it, and you made everybody in the crowd like, it does go in the fireplace, doesn't it? You know what I'm saying? So it's that little small thing. Like, you can rehearse lines, you can rehearse how to walk out, you can rehearse all of that. But at the end of the day, when the lights are dim and everybody's watching you, you got to think on your feet, because not everything is going to go how it was planned. And that, I feel, that comes from, obviously, Solomon, you know, having experience with acting and all of that, but also it comes from Mr. Burnham too, because you teach us, you know, from the beginning. Listen, we'll go over the lines and you'll have the script and all of that, but it's improv. You kind of gotta go on and, you know, go with the feeling of the tempo of, you know, how things are going, and you make the judgment off of that. And, you know, basically there's no turning back. So that was one thing that, you know, I was able to, you know, learn and, you know, be able to think. I mean, we talk about like stepping out of the comfort zone. Mr. Burnham, you know, once I auditioned for Spelling Bee, Mr. Burnham was so excited. He came to me the next day. He said, Richie B, you just got, you know, casted. I said, oh my gosh, Mr. B, really? So he was like, yeah. And so I was like, what role did I get? And he said, you know, you're playing one of the dads. I said, oh, okay, like that's cool. And then I thought about it. I said, wait, Mr. B, what do you mean one of the dads? Like what? Like I didn't understand what you really meant. So he said, well, you're one of 2 dads. And so I said, okay. And so from that moment, of course I was so happy, but I didn't know how to, like, you know how Solomon was just talking about, um, like coming out of the comfort zone, and, you not knowing how that person walks or how the person talks and how the person may act with people and stuff like that. You don't know. So it's all kind of guessing. And I didn't want to, like offend, anybody, or, do something that wasn't okay or anything like that. I just wanted to play the part. And Mr. B told me, he said, listen, Richie B, you're the man for the job. So get it done. And I said, all right, so I guess we're just gonna go full force with it. But yes, that's my answer.
We had the best looking interracial couple in that, right, with Nick Morgan and Rich Bolding as the 2 dads, right? Nick, the strapping young man, the 6'2", awesome lacrosse player, great guy. And again, yeah, right. And Rich just came right in and just and jumped right in and crushed it. And it's just, again, going back to, I think, as you said, when you have that moment when Solomon, the picture frame doesn't hang up there and it doesn't hook up properly, right? All you can do is be in the moment, right? And I think there's a huge life lesson there, and it's really hard. We make plans, we figure things out, we do all these things, and then you have a moment like that that's like this happy accident that happens on stage that you can't do that again. It just wouldn't come out the same way. It just wouldn't happen, right? So, and that's just the beauty of it, and also the amazing part of being in the moment. And hey, Joey's here. This is awesome.
All right, Joey, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Listen, I guess it wouldn't be a theater entrance without an actual late and fashionable entrance.
Yes,
Great.
it was all planned so well.
So well. Yeah. The time's different in Canada.
Time's way different here. It works way slower. And no, thanks for having me on the panel, guys. Nate, good to see you again. Haven't seen you in a while. Mr. Burnham, too. Thanks for having me. And
Well, why don't you, if you can, just give us a little intro, maybe a little bit of how you found Trinity-Pawling. And I know one of your first loves, well, there's a couple of loves, right? Music, hockey, but you're on this panel for some reason. So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Joey. I'm from Montreal, Canada. I found TP because I do play hockey. As Mr. Burlington was saying, I was not expecting to be in the theater at all, to be honest, when I first got there. And to be honest, I don't know who pushed me to do it, if it was myself or if it was just someone, maybe my advisors, Mr. Bell at the time or something like that. We're just like, hey, why don't you try it out? You're a pretty outgoing kid. And I had done little things before in school. And so I said, you know what, let me try it out. Went out for the first play. Got a little role as the butler who ends up being the killer at the end of a play called Drop Dead. So that was interesting. And then we did Spamalot, Nate and myself, with a couple other people. That was super, super fun. I think that was probably the highlight of my time at TP in the theater anyway. And so totally not expecting to be part of the theater, but it was easily some of my fondest memories at TP anyway.
That's great to hear. I mean, I saw Coach Loft just before I came here, and I mentioned that you were coming on, Joe. He's like, "Oh my gosh, he was great in Spamalot. He was great in Spamalot." So it's really great.
I mean, that's I think the crazy part about, Solomon. You are a fantastic lacrosse player. You are, but no one's going to remember you for your lacrosse stick. I mean, they're going to remember you for spelling words with your toes, right? I think that's the fact that Coach Loft said, "Oh yeah, Joey was a great hockey goalie." No. It was like, he was great on stage in Spamalot. So it's just amazing. And that's, again, I just, here's my soapbox, right? I just go back to, the opportunity for, guys like us to be able to play a sport we love, be involved in whatever we love, but also just dip our toes into theater. And I remember Mr. Burnham saying, in maybe one of his first times where he was getting up and introducing, it's just, there are not a lot of people that he was talking to the people in the audience, and he was specifically talking to the boys in the audience and saying, you don't get the opportunity. There are not a lot of people that get to see theater. And you get to see it at least 3 times a year here. And if that motivates you to do something else, it pushes you to go in a different direction. I mean, that's the beauty of a place like this. I think boarding school in general gives you that opportunity to step outside of yourself. And one of the, I think that same alum, I just want to read something he said, but wonderful to see and hear these young men discovering themselves through theater and life. He said, I must sign off. But if I may be so presumptuous, I will leave with what helped me in all my roles. And he always said 4 things. Who am I? Where am I? Who am I talking to? What do I want? And above all, listen. This if Regan LaFontaine is on the call, we gotta reach out to this fine alum and talk to him a little bit. But I think it's just an opportunity. It's just that word keeps on coming back to me. An opportunity to I don't know, just be something else that
Well,
you.
I think, yeah. And I mean, and some of that, is some of the stuff that I've tried to create here with some of the class structure, right? Is allowing that so that you have an opportunity to take a class, and it's not just about acting, right? We have an improv class now. We have a theater practices class. I have a stage combat class, and then I have a playwriting/directing class. So if you don't want to be on the stage, let's say, or you haven't found that part of you yet, but you are a really fantastic writer, or you want to explore storytelling that way, or you've got Nate, and we also have Solomon now, who are also doing, or hyphenates, directing, acting, producing, and whatever that is, right? And the same thing with Joey. I know that, Joey, you've segued into doing what you're doing through, and I'm sure that that time on the stage has lived in you as well. And then, and Richie, as soon as I heard this ESPN reference, I think of Scott Van Pelt, and I think of you, and you're like, I see all that. And it's, I think it is discovering who you are, figuring out some things. And also, like I said, maybe it's through writing, maybe it's through directing, maybe it's through acting, maybe it's being a producer, maybe it's through our tech theater. It doesn't have to be just on the stage. And I think that's kind of the beauty of some of this, is that, or at least what I want to try to put out, so that we can get people to come into this theater space to try something. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to just do acting, and improv, being in the moment. Rich mentioned it. It's all that. And, I've become, yeah. So
And Joey, music was a thing of yours. I mean, I just, right. I mean, and so is that something you continue to do? Or because I mean, 2016. So did you graduated, maybe still at it? What's the story?
Yeah. I just graduated this year, 2020, with a double major in Francophone Studies and Economics. That was from Hobart and William Smith.
What was the first thing you said?
Francophone Studies, so French and Francophone Studies. I wanted to make sure that if I was coming back home to work, people would still believe me that I spoke the French language. So obviously in Montreal, it's a big thing. So, but no, I mean, if there's one thing that actually theater, a couple of things I'd say that the theater, helped me with in the music side, was actually engaging with the crowd better than I used to. So I'm a DJ, and so that's what I do. I host events and stuff like that. And just that year in theater has made me a way better MC for events, for master ceremonies, because you understand the feedback that's coming from the crowd, like from the audience or from the crowd, a lot better, just in so many different situations. And then the other thing that I'd say I learned with just a life lesson, I guess, is just the way that I think Nate could probably talk about this too, is that a lot of times in the theater, when we were rehearsing for some scene, there was always something that could be changed. And there was always someone that came to the table with a new idea, or something that, like, maybe the director hadn't thought about, or let's say the main actors didn't think about, and it could have come from anywhere. And it was just like, oh, that's a phenomenal idea. Let's try this. Let's try it this way instead. And if it works out, then that's what we can use. And I think that's a really good life lesson in general, is that you never know where good advice is going to come from, and you should always be listening, like you had said before. So
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great, Joe. I mean, it's such a collaborative atmosphere. And if you think about it, right, I talk all the time about the ensembles, and so important. It's the same thing with a team, right? That's what we're doing. That's what you're doing. You're building a team mentality, and that there's, as I mentioned, right, Rich comes in this one scene at the end of Harvey and is amazing. And the same stuff that happens, and Solomon has to push that boulder up the mountain the whole time, and is fantastic. And we remember all that. And the same thing with, Magic Foot and all of that. And then Nate coming on and doing everything, and, getting to be Peter and all of that, and coming into his own through that whole experience. I think there's so much of that. And I hope, and I think there's so much to be taken away from that. And I love what, I love what Alan said there, about the W's and the who are you and what's going on and all of that. And it does come to that. It really does. And those are the foundations of acting. And I think it's also what we're working on in playwriting now. We're talking all the time about wants. What is the want? What is the want of the character? What are they trying to do? And if that's not clear, then the acting is not going to be clear. If you're specific, the audience will get the general idea. That's what I say all the time, especially with Shakespeare. When you're looking at the Tempest, Solomon, if you're specific with that, you'll know what's going on.
And
so,
Mr. Burnham, I think one thing that I definitely think we've covered in a 45-minute time frame is that, like, the students at Trinity-Pawling don't fit one category, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at this group right here, and I mean, just you look at the background, and that's not a virtual background in Solomon Hess's room. He's got a guitar, he's got a Red Sox banner, he's got some sort of
sorry,
lacrosse.
Mr. Burlington. Sorry, he's got that Red Sox banner.
Yeah, well, whatever. Lacrosse or hockey jersey. I don't even know what's being blinded out by the light, but it's
that's my Toy Story poster.
There you go. Okay, so there's the cherry on top, right?
Right.
So
right.
It's not an athlete, it's not an artist, it's not a scientist. We're all of it, and I think that's when they can get up on stage or get up in any format, and be able to. I mean, Joey, I remember it was our first year together. I mean, our only year together. You did our acceptance video for admissions, and I think we got in trouble for that, but I don't know if there was like copyright issues, but we're learning early about all these sorts of things. But I just think it's amazing that I remember Solomon's Chapel talk about I was a lacrosse player, right? And that was my identity. But just look at that growth. And now there's going to be a music minor, and maybe, are you going to take voice lessons from one of our current parents? Is that
I'm actually already taking. I'm in my second semester now. Yes. Yes. I took my first semester in the fall, and I'm in my second semester of lessons.
Yeah. So, I mean, talk about alumni, current parents, it's just that connection that will last you all, an absolute lifetime. And, Mr. Burnham, before we get even a little further, I do want to just, one of the questions that came through was very more of a kind of a technical question, but how big is our drama club, or, tech crew and actors? And I know, with what we're dealing with now, it's not like you can get all 20 people on stage, but, we had a great outdoor show this fall.
Yep.
So how many people are involved right now?
It varies, right? And especially this year has been a little funky, but, where I would say we had about 20 people involved when we did the spring of the complete works of William Shakespeare, and then we moved in from there. And that's a little bit of a cross section. We mentioned earlier in this that, we're really lucky to have young women from Pawling, from Kennedy Catholic, from Patterson, join us, from Brewster and everything like that. And it's hugely, hugely important. It allows us to do different plays. It obviously is, we've got Gianna, who is a theater major. We've got Kara is a theater major. Jess Tachi is a theater major at Ithaca, and all of these people still doing the work, right? So I think usually we have around 20, but the nice thing is, like I said, with building some of these programs and school offerings, classes, I've got improv as a term semester. We do it 3 times, and I have 7 or 8 in this time, and I think I have 11 in the spring. Same thing with combat. Stage combat is around 10 each. And so I feel like that there's more interest happening. I've got a handful of kids in the playwriting class, 5 or 6 in my theater class. So this year is a little funky just because of being remote too. And that's the hard thing right now, is just, I think we're all missing that connection. And I think we're all missing that connection of being, even if it's just observing and watching a play, and breathing in the same space, and being part of that is hard. So sometimes some of those numbers, we've got a few remote students, and I've been a little leery of doing another Zoom production. I've been a part of a few things and I've seen a few things, and it's hard. When Nate's shaking his head, he sees it. It can be hard, and especially here, where these students, like, it's a 7 to 9 o'clock bonus for them, and like being on Zoom all day long, let's say, that's hard to say, hey, come and hang out, because in the hanging out's the fun part, right? You got Richie B coming in early to sit and watch rehearsals and absorb, but also get to know people and hang out. And then, right, and then rehearsals end at 9 and everybody's like, oh, I've got to go at 9. But no, for some reason they stick around, and there's a reason they're sticking around, right? Yeah, exactly. Everybody's always, and the music's blaring in the theater. Everybody's having a good time. And so, I think the more we do that, the more it brings in students, and I hope, especially in the spring, with the spring plays always trying to be more of a one act or a bigger play with some smaller roles, that we can, spark some interest in there. So
Yeah.
it varies. It varies.
And I think also, you're talking about, the why there's such an attraction to being around that. But then I also think we just got a chat in from one of the fans, and there's a lot of faculty kids who absolutely love and adore the guys that get up on stage. And I know they might still be up, but, well, I definitely know Vivian, your daughter, she's up. She's got a couple more hours before she goes to bed.
True.
But Joseph and Meredith, I mean, Peter and the Starcatcher was like their first kind of big show. They're 7 and 9 years old, and that's like, Nate Tanner's a god to them, right? So it's just, and they're on tonight and they're watching. Hi, Joseph, Meredith, Vivian. Hi, guys. But then you, Mr. Burnham, you're like this famous person to these little kids. I mean,
Sure.
It's the Santa Claus thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because I look like Santa Claus, right? I know. So that's what they're hoping. That's what it is. Well, I mean,
it's just an amazing opportunity for everyone.
It's an amazing opportunity, right? I mean, we're right here on campus. The kids can come over. We don't play to the audience. I mean, I think the plays that we choose are really challenging and tough, and luckily we have fantastic support here. But yeah, the kids love it. The faculty kids love coming to the shows. They do. They love it. And I feel like we've tried to create more of an event, of making it an event and everything, if that's even pre-show music or how we promote it and all of that. So it is great. And it's a great way to spark some interest in them early on, right? It's a great way for them to start to appreciate it. And they don't even have to be theater goers or involved in it, but to understand and appreciate it. A couple of these guys will be like, oh my gosh, here he goes, right? So, the fact that 80% of kids, if you don't see a play by the time you leave high school, they say 80% chance you'll never see a play. And I think that's a really, really poignant statistic. And it's like, these young kids have an opportunity to see a play. These young kids get to see Nate Tanner, Rich, Joey, and Solomon do a play, and then hang out with them, and then go see the play again, and then hang out with them, and then go see the play again. And it's like, it's really, really pretty fantastic. And they'll also become great theater goers. They'll go to museums. They will be involved in the arts. They will support the arts, and they will support schools that make the arts important later on in life. And they'll do that. And I know that. That's what we're doing. We're raising people to be aware, right? And that's what I think is a big part of it. And finding your own talents and finding your talent, whatever that might be as well.
Yep.
So I think
and you had mentioned the combat acting class.
Yep.
How is that even working?
Yeah.
Right now?
Well, usually we do hand-to-hand combat, and we're usually doing hand-to-hand, but because of COVID, where half of the moves, Rich was in my class with me with his first year here. So half the moves we really even can't do because we can't get within 6 feet and a few things. So what we've started to do is bring in some rapier and dagger work, which has been just such a blast. And so they're not real rapier and daggers. We do have some, and I've been very, very apprehensive to let students have those because A, they'll go missing, or B, somebody will get hurt and my program will no longer be happening. but we're doing rapier and dagger work, and it's great. It's great. It's fantastic storytelling. They really get into it, and and the turnout's awesome. They're great. So that's one thing that we've been able to do through COVID and working that. And as you mentioned, we did a fall production outside, which was really great, and it moved around from different spots. Nate, you got to see a little of it, and you got to see your brother play the role that you played, which was kind of crazy. So, and all of that. But yeah, so everybody's kind of calling audibles during this time and trying to figure it out as you go along, right? I mean, I think that's probably, again, right? How do you stay present? How do you stay in the moment?
Right.
How do you figure out what to do next?
Did
Yeah.
Did anybody take the public speaking class?
No, nope.
None of these guys did. Okay, so I think, I mean, it would have been a class, specifically Richard, I mean, who's looking to be, and not that you had any issues with public speaking. So I just want to preface that first. But, one of the questions that came in from one of our viewers, do you feel like acting has helped you think on your feet? And Joe, you kind of already mentioned it, but, speaking more confident in public or performing your job. I mean, you talked about it in a good way. I mean, getting on stage allows you to do so much more in your life.
I would definitely say that it's definitely helped. Because even though, for those of you that don't know, I have no problem with just speaking. I love talking to people. I love getting to know the people and making myself heard. But what I will say is that another side that I guess I just really didn't realize is the impact that you have without even trying to make one. Like you're just thinking in your mind that you're going to theater and that's what you're doing. Like that's all that there is. But then you don't realize, like, for instance, a lot of my friends, when I told them, the roles I was getting and stuff like that, like they, were kind of just like giggling and laughing about it. But then after they came and they saw the show, they was like, oh my gosh, I think I want to do that. And so you don't realize, all the way down to the faculty kids. Like I have my my headphones on, and I'm walking to class, and I have Vivian running, behind me, and she's like, "Rich, can we do our handshake that you did in the play, or can we do that, or can you say this line just like how you said it in the play?" And all different types of things, and you don't realize this sort of things when when you're playing your role, when you're talking with others, you don't realize the impact that you're having on the community. You know what I'm saying? And so even I was in class one day when I got to New Haven, and I get a video, and it's Kwaku, doing it's Kwaku acting, and he has his own accent going, and he's doing his thing, and like I'm proud because I'm like, I impacted this guy where, now, he's so young and he has so much potential, and all these kids, they all have potential, and, I'm just so happy to just see them, enjoying themselves and having fun.
Well, and that's, Kent, I mean, that's something you knew, I don't know how long ago this started, but, middle schoolers are getting in front of you and getting into the theater.
Well, yeah, and you talk about Kwaku, right? Perfect example. I mean, he is naturally talented. I mean, he just is, and I hope that he takes some theater classes, and I hope he gets involved, because I think he's got an incredible imagination. He's bold, he's brave, he's funny. He's just naturally funny, and he's a great storyteller. And yeah, so we've got the 7th and 8th grade, they spend a semester. They also do music throughout the whole year, which is great. But we get a semester with them, and they're working on some improv. We're working on, where they're learning the structure, and they're learning about theater and about the space itself. And then this year, what we really did, which was really fun, they got to write their own plays and then stage them. So they're understanding, again, going back to this idea that, you might have a kid in that group that's a fantastic writer. And if that's not shown to him, or if he doesn't have that opportunity, that might be squelched, or it might not happen because he might not want to be on the stage. Or you might have somebody who's a fantastic builder, right? Tech theater is so overlooked sometimes. It's such an creative mindset. It's such a creative mindset. And, I mean, designer, if you can design, you'll work in the theater more as a designer than you will as an actor. And so if you can meld those two worlds and know those kind of things, it's really pretty fantastic. So yeah, I mean, again, you're trying to get these kids at a young age, and you hope that they get to come see some plays and they get involved. And then, and then you get them sending videos to these guys saying, hey, check this out, look at me. So, which is what it's all about. So
absolutely. But before we, it's 8 o'clock, and just so you know, those bells were not for the webinar. I'm sure all the alums on this call know what that means. It's study hall, but that doesn't affect us right now. But I would love, maybe for the 5 of you, maybe to just give, one kind of final thought about, what you've taken away from, and I'm not talking about a huge soliloquy here, but just, what you took away from, your time at Trinity-Pawling. And Grant, I mean, we're talking about 6 years for someone and 9 months for someone else, right? So, and that's not because he did anything wrong. He was here for 1 year and graduated and went on. But just let's go around the clock here, and Rich, we'll start with you. Just, what was it about TP for you? And then how has that impacted you where you are now?
Wow, it's so hard because TP was just a life changer for me. Not even a game changer, a life changer for me. I went to different schools, and then TP ended up being, the final school. And it taught me a lot of things about myself. It taught me a lot of things about, like a community, and like, like a family oriented community. At the end of the day, no matter if you were middle school to high school, to me, you were my family. It wasn't my friends. It wasn't anything. It was my brothers. And I think that that's one thing that, I mean, I don't really know Nate or Joey, but that's one thing that I'll say, is that it really is a brotherhood. You hear it, but it's like, is it really? And it is. So I'll say one thing that I definitely took away from TP is TP wants to instill in everybody a voice, and to speak up for when you really believe and firm with what with what you personally, what your personal beliefs are. And that's one thing, even though, I can speak up, and, I have no problem in public speaking and stuff like that. TP made it known, like, listen, you got to speak up for yourself. And they help you, from Mr. Burnham's classes, public speaking classes, and all different types of things like that. And they help prepare you for the world. And I think that that's very important, because you got to grow up sometime, and this is a great stepping stone to be able to do that.
Awesome. Nate?
I think one of the biggest things that comes to mind is that TP taught me how to collaborate and be a collaborative person and be a part of a team and to be a leader. Specifically, it makes me think of theater, just because there's so much that can go wrong. And honestly, some of the best things that can happen in a show is when something does go wrong. It's you and 5 of your bestest buddies in the whole world are up there, and you're like, how the heck are we going to figure this out? And you do it together because you have each other's backs. And there's something so beautiful about that. There's an expression in theater, it's pick up and deal. And I think that's something I've carried with me throughout everything I do, because in so many instances, life is going to throw so much, junk at you, and you're not going to know what to do. And you're just going to have to pick up and deal, or you're going to have to ask somebody for help, or you're going to have to be that helping hand for somebody else. And that's really a concept that theater teaches, and it's a good one.
Awesome. Joey?
I thought we were gonna save the old man for last or something here. No, I listen. Both of these guys just put it pretty well. I came to TP as, like you said, for 9 months, and I came in as a, through and through athlete. That's all I ever wanted to do. Like, one lane, and that was it. Go 100% at this, and that's it. But when I got to TP, coming from 2 other places where I took those at bats kind of thing, and it maybe didn't work out. And at TP, I was never a starter. I was never the superstar of the hockey team, but because I was so comfortable being with, the brotherhood, like we've been talking about, it just made me say, okay, you know what, maybe I can try something else. Maybe I can be someone else too, and not just unidimensional, and not just head down and do this and that's all. I thought theater was the thing that really made me be comfortable in who I was, and actually just gave me a ton of lessons that I sometimes never learned from hockey. As much as it is a team sport, it's not always the same. Someone could be to blame, in a hockey game, whereas in theater, you kind of just have to, like Nate said, deal with it. Just deal with the situation as it happens, because nobody wins in the end unless the whole cast wins, unless the whole crew wins, unless everyone's pulling together in the same direction. So I think, to sum it up, basically, that was my TP experience, coming in as someone who was not expecting to be anything else other than a hockey player, and just happy to be a lot more now.
Mr. Hess.
Yeah, I think the big thing that like I always said and that everyone alluded to on the call is, brotherhood, but sometimes we get, so caught up in the idea of everyone else that, forget how much like TP really made me aware of myself, and, teaches you how to be yourself and gives you the platform to do that, and helps you peel back the layers that you don't even realize are there, coming in as, just a strict athlete, right? Who, you're friendly, you're comfortable with things, but you never realize that you have this, side to you. And then you feel like sometimes you have to play a part, whether it's in real life or on stage, right? You're always trying to fit that mold, fit the character. I don't know if Mr. Burnham remembers, but for Harvey, I came and auditioned for Elwood. And at first, my whole audition was just a Jimmy Stewart impression, because I had watched the movie beforehand. I was like, okay, if I want this part, I have to do it like this. I have to fit this mold to do it just like Jimmy Stewart. And Mr. Burnham came up on stage, like in the middle of my audition, and he came up and he was like, stop doing it like Jimmy Stewart. He already did it like Jimmy Stewart. He's like, just try it as yourself. And then that's what I did. And that's what I try to do with every role now. And like I still try to watch, other people's takes on it, but it's the same with life. If you're going to try and do it like someone else already did it, it's going to come out bland. It's going to come out flat. So you got to, use the platform you're given to really just let yourself shine.
Mr. Burnham, that was pretty good.
That was pretty good. I don't,
That was- That was not scripted. That was your improv class to a T right there.
That's pretty amazing there. I hope we have this recorded, because that was pretty fantastic.
Oh wait, I forgot to hit record. Just
All
kidding.
four of you. No, it was great. I think what you all kind of capture a little bit, and Solomon did right at the end, and my wife chimed in here with a comment, and what we say all the time, and what we're trying to put up on stage with shows of being, with diversity and equity and inclusion. And I think inclusion is the most important thing. I think the theater world is inclusive. I think everything else will kind of fall in line if we can make things inclusive. I think the exclusivity is the issue. So I think the more that we can be inclusive, we're going to get the equity, we're going to get the diversity. But as she said, if you can see it, you can be it. And I think going back to even Solomon talking about watching things and then seeing, Jimmy Stewart do his thing, and then, okay, I saw him do it. Now I can do it. I can do it myself, and I can do it my way, and all of these ideas. And I think it's the same thing. We see something, we absorb it, we see an image, and then we can transform it. And I think that's really, really important. I think that we can be transformative, and I just love this whole inclusive nature that we've talked about here for the last 65 minutes. That it's been great. It's been really, really great. And I can't thank you all enough for sharing. Mr. Burlington sharing his time here and getting on stage back then, and then also in Spelling Bee, Rich coming on and sharing this. And I remember these moments vividly, Rich, of us working on the script and you coming into audition and all of that, and as well. And then Solomon, the journey that I was really lucky to have you as a student here for 3 years. I will not, it was fantastic. And to get to see you step into those shoes as Elwood P. Dowd, I felt like was transformative for you and transformative for me. I think that production will match up to any Harvey production that you would see on any college level and possibly even on some of the small professional levels. I think that from top to bottom was unbelievable. Nate, so thankful for you to be here and that you're doing everything that you're doing and that you continue to be a theater maker and that you're doing all of that, what you're doing, and you're directing and you're acting, and that you come back and you support everything here. And it's not just because your brother's in it, but you're at the 24-hour plays and, you know, and seeing all the bumps and the scars that we show up. And then, but you understand it, that it's like, you know, it takes, it takes a lot to put up something great. And I am always asking us to try to strive to be great. Like I don't remember going to a good play. I always say that. I remember going to great plays. So we want to try to strive to be great. Joey, I mean, you're a perfect example of somebody who comes in with their head down, one lane, as you said, right? And then we walk out of here a different person and in a different way of functioning and a different way of looking at the world. Thank you guys, everybody. It makes me really proud to lead this program, to get to know you and to have all five of you share your experience. Thank you. It's remarkable and I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you, Mr. Burlington.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah. Nights like this make me proud to be a part of the Brotherhood, and which will last for a lifetime. So thank you on behalf of everyone here. Thank you for joining us out there in the world. And, you know, as we always end the night with our Pride Perspectives, we hope that you are healthy and happy and having a fantastic start to 2021. And we really, really, really hope to see you all in person in the near future. So on behalf of everyone at Trinity-Pawling, thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you, everybody.